Broadcasting from Detroit's Cass Corridor, it's The Metro on WDET. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Sam Corey, sitting in for Robin Vincent. Today on the show, a new report highlights the mistakes Wayne County's prosecution team sometimes makes and their willingness to right their wrongs so no one is ever wrongfully convicted of something they didn't do.
Plus, because of the widespread availability of internet, gambling has become more available than ever. We'll hear from someone who's been tracking the issue and trying to prevent kids from recklessly spending their parents' money while playing a video game.
We begin by looking at the cracks in the criminal justice system. Who gets wrongfully swept into those cracks, and what it takes to climb out of them. Eric Anderson spent about 9 years in prison for a robbery he didn't commit. The case rested on one person claiming he was the robber. Wayne County now says that claim wasn't reliable. A new report from prosecutors, public defenders, Detroit police, judges, and advocates traces how that mistake happened. Public professionals, of course, make mistakes, but when they do, they should be asking why they happened and correcting them. So what was learned from this report? And what would it take for no one to ever be wrongfully convicted in Wayne County? Valerie Newman leads the Wayne County Conviction Integrity Unit, which worked on this report. Valerie, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. So you lead the Conviction Integrity Unit. Why did you decide to do this report?
This report has been something that the prosecutor and I have wanted to do for a number of years. Originally, it was financially not feasible because it was very expensive to bring in the Quattrone Center and to have this done. But a grant from the Bureau of Justice Assistance allowed us to do this, and we were happy and eager to jump in. One of the main reasons we wanted to do this is the prosecutor has led the state of Michigan, Prosecutor Worthy has led the state of Michigan by forming a conviction integrity unit. Mm-hmm. We are one of the most prolific conviction integrity units in the entire country. So she has shown her commitment to this. Getting people out is really important, but preventing it from ever happening.
Right, any wrongful conviction.
Is a huge step in the right direction.
Is this the first of its kind report? Have you ever done anything like this before?
Nothing like this has been done in Michigan before. It has been done in other states, but very rarely. If you think about it, it's very common. If you hear of a plane crash, if you hear of a train crashing or any kind of major incident like that, what's the first thing you see on the news? All these people are coming together to figure out what happened. Mm-hmm. Why did this happen? And then what can we do to prevent it from ever happening again? So the question seems sort of obvious. Why don't we do this in the legal system when we are taking away people's liberty?
Yeah. And you're saying for Wayne County's purposes, it's really just been about money, and y'all got a grant to be able to do this. So you covered the case of Eric Anderson, who was wrongfully convicted of a crime he didn't do. Why did you choose this case to cover?
So we chose this case for a number of reasons. One is we had it presents one of the common causes of wrongful conviction, which is misidentification. Two, it gave us an opportunity to look at several things from the Detroit Police Department. Sometimes cases are either extremely complicated and would be hard to take apart. This case presented us with a fairly simple fact pattern and fairly simple ways that the system did not perform the way we would want it to perform.
Yeah, and we want to get into that. So there were a lot of mistakes that happened in this case. Here is John Holloway, who works at the University of Pennsylvania Law School and who worked on this report.
What you see in all of these cases is it's never just one thing. We start with an arrest that was inaccurate, but then all of the checks and balances that we already have in the system are not, for some reason, able to pick up this case. Generally, a prosecutor would screen it and say, this doesn't hold water, or the defense bar would identify it, or something during trial. None of those things happened in this case.
So what John is saying that when looking at cases of wrongful convictions, in general, there are a lot of things that go wrong, not just one thing.
Always.
And that is the case here with the wrongful conviction of Eric Anderson as well. So briefly tell us what went wrong.
So many things went wrong. So let's start with the police, which is where every case starts with, right? you don't get into the legal system unless the police make an arrest. And with the arrest in this case, the police had information that the assailants were masked and that one of the victims was injured. And that victim came to the police a few days later with a picture that he had printed off his computer and said, "Here, this is the guy that assaulted me." And the police did not ask any questions. Where does this picture come from? Why do you think this is the picture? It turns out that the picture is from this gentleman's girlfriend who told him, "I used to date this guy. This is the kind of stuff he likes to do." So she had zero personal knowledge. So to run with that picture is kind of the beginning of a downhill slide of how it leads into the criminal justice system.
Yeah, and that was just the first thing, right? I mean, there were a lot of other things that went wrong here, too. A key witness was never called. Prosecutors didn't challenge the shaky identification that you referenced. So things were incomplete. From one perspective, this had just looked like poor performance, honestly, from a number of different folks. What do you make of that perspective?
Well, I think, I don't know if your listeners have heard, or everyone has eaten a piece of Swiss cheese, and there's holes all over the Swiss cheese, right? There's a Swiss cheese model theory that says nothing can get through because the holes don't line up. And you need all the holes to line up to have an error, and it goes through so many steps in the process that that's unlikely. And in fact, that's absolutely wrong when it comes to the criminal legal system. The holes often line up, and it gets all the way through every single check and balance. So let's start back where we started with the police. Eric Anderson had an alibi. When he was questioned, he's like, "I don't even know what you're talking about. I was at a Coney Island. I was shot at that Coney Island, and I went to the hospital. I can prove all of this. I have medical record." Same night, not exact same time, but around the same time frame.
Sure.
And he had medical records, and he had x-rays, and he could, everything that he was saying could be corroborated. The first kind of domino to fall in not doing due diligence was the shooting at the Coney Island happened in one precinct, and the carjacking happened in a different precinct. And nobody really went back and investigated Eric Anderson's alibi to see if they could corroborate that he was, in fact, in the Coney Island at that time.
I guess that just leads to the question of why. Like, why didn't they?
Right. That's a hard question to answer because even at trial, Eric Anderson's attorney never produced the video. He had the videotape. He never produced the videotape. And part of it is when you look at the videotape, you do not see Eric Anderson's face. You clearly see what is a black male who looks to be about Eric Anderson's height and build. You can see he's wearing a very distinctive, but blue jeans with a distinctive design on the blue jeans. And you can see him hop. So he basically walks in the Coney Island, and you see a little hop, and he heads back out, consistent with being shot. There's other video from the Coney Island that shows the shooters. So you can see people pulling out their guns and shooting from the videotape. And so it would not have been a very difficult thing to try and go through and figure out whether or not it was Eric Anderson.
So Detroit Police Chief Todd Bettison has said that something like this wouldn't happen again because we have surveillance technology that we didn't have back then. At least he was hinting at that in the press conference that y'all had. I guess that doesn't seem to exactly be lining up with what you're saying right now. This seems to be more like we had the technology, we had the evidence, like the material was there, it just wasn't produced correctly, and people weren't really collaborating and coordinating with each other the way they should have been.
That's a big part of it, but I do think the chief is right. Today they would have license plate readers, so they would be able to track the car. And we have better technology, so it would have been, if this happened today, it would have been much easier for the police to follow the car with green light cameras and see that it didn't make a stop. So I do think it's both. It's both that things were available then that were not pursued, and technology is better today, and it would allow the police to better be able to facilitate corroboration of the alibi, whereas back then you had a grainy video, you couldn't see his face, you had medical records, but you have a gap.
Yeah.
From the Coney Island to the hospital, there's a gap. And that was the prosecution's theory at trial, that during that gap, well, first of all, refuting that he was even shot at the Coney Island. But even if you assume that he was shot at the Coney Island and you accept that the gap allowed time for this carjacking on the way to the hospital.
Yeah. Detroit police have been using Project Greenlight for years now. Surveillance technology is much more common. Do we know that wrongful convictions have gone down? Do we know anything about those numbers?
There's really no way to measure that. I wish that we could concretely say they're putting less people into the system because they're able to prove their alibis or they're able to prove it wasn't them by using the technology. But that I'm not aware of any studies that look at cases where they were looking at a person and because of the technology, they ruled that person out. Although that would be a very interesting study for somebody to do.
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of wrongful convictions, I mean, it's really just, it's up to you, it's up to your team, it's up to the goodwill of people working in prosecutor's office of going back and being like, we either need some kind of tip-off or we think something is fishy here to try to find whether a wrongful conviction happened.
A little more complicated than that. So conviction integrity units were established back in 2007, and the point of them is that they're outside the judicial process. So the judicial process places lots of hurdles, favors finality over continually litigating, and that can be very difficult to get over. So what conviction integrity units do is they have to have something new. So we're not just looking at something. If I looked at Eric Anderson's case and I said, oh, I see lots of red flags here, this doesn't seem right, but had nothing new to look at or investigate, I wouldn't be able to do anything with that case. I can't just put my own feelings into it.
Yeah.
There has to be some new information. And in this case, there was a bombshell of new information, which was a confession from someone who claimed to have been the perpetrator.
Right. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Sam Corey. My guest is Valerie Newman. She leads the Conviction Integrity Unit in the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. We're talking about a report her office worked on that sought to understand why Eric Anderson was initially wrongfully convicted by the county. Eric was exonerated in 2019. Valerie, as we've been talking about, there are a lot of mistakes here. I do wonder what accountability looks like. Was anybody spoken to, after y'all did this report, and I know this was, of course, years later, but was anybody spoken to, reprimanded, or told to reconsider some of their processes because of the mistakes that y'all found in this report?
So the entire concept and underpinning of these reports is it's a blameless environment because you want people to cooperate. You want people to freely be able to discuss, this is what I was thinking in that moment. And the whole point of the report is to just like it is with a plane crash or a train crash or whatever, try to take people back into what was going on, what happened. And people are really not going to talk to you if you're going to put out a report that points a finger. And so there are no reprimands, and probably, what happened here with the defense attorney, he's deceased. What happened with the judge and his comments and his temperament during the trial, he's deceased. So
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do in that situation. And very often these cases are old.
Yeah.
So there is no real...
This was like 15 years ago initially when this happened.
Right. There's really no reprimand that you can provide. The whole point of this is to say, we're not going to call you out by name, but what we want to do is change the environment, change the process. So it doesn't matter who's in the Detroit Police Department, who's in the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, who the defense attorney is, who the judge is. These apply across every spectrum.
Yeah. I do appreciate this a lot because in order to get to the bottom of something, in order to collaborate with a lot of different people and get them to recognize problems that happen or mistakes even that were made, you don't want to call them out. You want to call them in. You want to lower their defenses so they're open to the mistakes that they made and so those can be corrected.
Right.
Also, as you know, a man was wrongfully convicted and spent almost a decade in prison. I guess one thing that I wonder is, did you talk to Eric Anderson? I wonder what he makes of this process, also maybe what he thinks accountability should be like, because ultimately he ended up at the wrong end of the stick here.
Absolutely. So Eric Anderson was included in this process. I will say that typically the exoneree is not included in the process. I spoke with the folks at the Quattrone Center and explained that I thought it was very important that Eric be interviewed and have a role to play in the process because we're talking about him. We're talking about his liberty that was taken away from him.
Yeah.
And so he was involved in the process, and I kept him abreast of what was going on. So he knew the process. Before anyone called him up, he knew this process was happening. He knew what it was about. He knew we were using his case. But I want to go back real quick to the point of calling people out. Because the other problem with calling people out is that people can point a finger and say, you're the bad actor.
Yeah.
And everyone gets absolved of the responsibility because they point a finger at one person. And it's not true. Because in this case, we found, I don't want to say culpability, but we found processes that can be fixed.
So what did Eric make of the report? What did he make of the process of what y'all did?
He was pretty blown away that there were 40 contributing factors to his wrongful conviction. I mean, for him, he thinks about it as a misidentification, right? Like my former girlfriend put me in the mix and everything went downhill from there. I mean, he trusted the system. He knew he didn't do this. He really never thought that he would be convicted.
Yeah.
So I think for him, Eric has been working with the Organization of Exonerees to bring light to the injustices, to try and help people who are returning home from prison who were wrongfully convicted. And so I think I can fairly speak with him because we've done interviews together, so I'm not saying anything that he hasn't already said.
Sure.
Which is he's really happy that this process took place and that improvements are going to come from it, and some good is going to come from the almost 10 years that was stolen from him.
Yeah. Last question for you. I can talk to you for a lot longer about this, Valerie, but I am wondering about the recommendations that came out of the report. I know Prosecutor Kim Worthy of Wayne County spoke a little bit about having a cohesive digital system, which has happened, but I think she wants improvements upon that. Also, not having such high turnover in Wayne County and attracting talent. That seems like a problem that's bigger than Wayne County. Like you need a lot of money to do that. What are some of the recommendations so wrongful conviction doesn't happen, or if it does, it's exceedingly rare?
So one of the biggest recommendations, and again, going back to your very first question, why did we pick this case, is recommendations to improve case screenings, both on the police end and the prosecutor end, when it's an eyewitness identification of a stranger. So there's some very simple things that are not done now that can very easily be done, which is when the police take a statement, for example, about an identification, ask about it. Like the perpetrators, were their faces covered in any way, shape, or form? What was it like? What's the lighting like? I mean, certain things that you could put out there. And in this case, the fact that both perpetrators were masked, it was night, the victims, even one victim said, look, all I saw was the gun that was in my face. And so that should raise a lot of red flags in terms of any later identification that call for greater scrutiny by the police. And that goes back to another thing I mentioned, which is, where did this photo come from? One of the victims walks into the police station with a photo printed out, and it's not documented where it comes from. Yeah. Those are the kinds of things that should be documented, and then again should raise a red flag before going after Eric Anderson, that this woman who put him in the mix, he didn't confess to her. He didn't say, I did this. She just said, oh, it might be him because he likes to do this. She, in fact, had talked to him, and he said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I
had nothing to do with this. Right. And so that goes back to what you said about trial. She was never called as a witness at trial.
Due diligence. I mean,
right.
People got to do their due diligence.
Right.
Valerie Newman is the Deputy Chief and Director of the Conviction Integrity Unit in the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. Valerie, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Coming up, wealth is often passed down from generation to generation through homes, but in Detroit, there are many properties that have not been properly passed down from parent to child. We'll find out why and what can be done to change that.